8:44, good morning. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Ellie.
And it's time to go through the papers now. And joining us this morning is editor of Spiked, Tom Slater, alongside writer Candice Holdsworth. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
And Candice, should we start with you? And the Mail. Oh, we're not starting with Candice? No.
Oh, we're not
Look
doing
like,
that.
like a line through that top one.
No.
No? Pardon me, Candice.
No,
we're going to go back to Tom. Tom, in the Telegraph, nuclear fusion plant is the Apollo moment for the UK.
This is actually Candice's story.
Yeah.
I believe.
Wow.
I know.
Have you got are the names all mixed up on our list? Well, I'll tell you what, let's just... Who wants to talk about what, Candice? Off you go.
OK, so this is quite an interesting story. This is in the Telegraph. It's about a possible nuclear fusion plant that's going to be built in Nottinghamshire. It's going to be called STEP, and this is like the holy grail of energy, basically, is nuclear fusion.
Yeah.
It's totally clean. It produces huge amounts of energy. One of the big problems, though, is apparently it is quite difficult to build, so it will only be ready by 2040. But it's good to see some long-term planning because we haven't had enough of that in energy. I mean, we should have a lot more. We should have much more diverse energy sources, but we don't because, for instance, energy plants weren't built 10, 11 years ago because people thought it would take too long to come online. So it's good that there is long-term planning now.
Yeah, but we need to actually make nuclear fusion work first.
Yes, well, this is what they're saying. This is one of the tricky things.
They have done it, haven't they? But they've produced like a minute... Because it requires vast amounts of energy to be put in it to make it work. And they've only sort of once or twice actually managed to extract more energy than they put in.
Yes,
but it's the first step.
Yes, yeah. It would be transformative.
Oh,
I mean, it's an absolute game changer. So let's see. I think this is what we forget. You know, this is what Just Stop Oil gets so wrong: is the big changes and the things that are really going to make a difference. It's going to come from science, technology, and some law and some policy as well. But it's not going to be mindless activism. These are the people putting the real work in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No, completely. And as you say, it's the holy grail because the fact not only would this energy be kind of limitless and abundant, but also completely clean. It's one of those things where you think, particularly the environmental movement's relationship with nuclear has shown that this was never really just about climate change. They've kind of just got this aversion to modern society, to industrial society's kind of progress. They do have this kind of quite romantic idea that we should all go back to the land. But it's, and I think their relationship with nuclear is showing that. Now, a lot of environmentalists are starting to be a little bit more pro-nuclear. They've kind of realised it's got to be part of the picture. But the fact that they've been against it for so long, I think, just shows that these people are kind of just against progress, really. You know, they don't like the fact that society's gone a little bit too far in their view.
Yeah.
Tom, shall we look at one of your stories now, and the battle for Borisland?
Yeah, so it's right up in the Sun on Sunday about one of the by-elections next week, this one in Uxbridge and South Ruislip, Boris Johnson's former seat, which has become a really interesting race because, on the one hand, Labour would expected to walk it. I think his majority was down to under 10,000 at the last election, given the sort of change in demographics. Also because of the fact that, as we've been talking about, the Tory party is completely imploded. It's a by-election, turnout's going to be low, people will expect people to kind of issue a protest vote against the government, and yet Labour have still run into trouble because of the ULEZ scheme, because of the fact that this is a constituency that's right on the edge of Greater London. There's a lot of people who, in the reporting here and elsewhere, will say things like, you know, I run a market stall. A lot of people drive in from outside London to come and say that will end almost overnight. Large parts of their businesses just being shut down. The Labour Party have tried to kind of look both ways on this issue. The local candidate has said he wants it paused for now. You've even had Keir Starmer have to kind of row in behind him, which has created, obviously, friction with Sadiq Khan and City Hall. So it'll be interesting to watch. I would be amazed if Labour didn't win this seat. In so many ways, it should be handed to them on the platter, but it would be fascinating to see if it's a lot closer than might otherwise been, given the fact that you have, again, this very unpopular policy being imposed on people in that constituency.
It's going to be an interesting one to watch. Can we have a look at what's this in The Observer about the actor Jonah Hill?
Yeah, so this has been a big debate. Some people say it's really trivial. So his ex-girlfriend shared some texts that he'd sent her telling her he didn't like her posting pictures of herself in a bikini on Instagram and hanging around certain people. And opinion's been quite divided on it, saying that he was using the language of therapy to actually be quite manipulative, saying, these are my boundaries, I don't want you doing this. Whereas, you know, people have said you can't apply boundaries to other people's behaviour, you can only apply it to your own. Martha Gill, who's written this article, has said that she finds that very interesting, the way therapy speak has found its way into popular culture, and people sort of misuse it, and they use words like boundaries in the wrong context. Of course, many would say that, you know, Jonah Hill shouldn't have got all this attention, but I like the way that she focuses specifically on that, because there's so much online as well about mental health and, you know, dealing with, you know, various things. But a lot of it's just misinformation, and what is appropriate in a therapeutic setting isn't necessarily appropriate language to use in all your relationships in every context.
Yeah, well, look, it's an interesting point. I wouldn't really know that. I mean, I always find it fascinating that Americans everyone seems to have a shrink, a therapist, don't they, for everything? Everyone's got to talk everything out with a stranger.
Exactly, and I think there's a certain point in which that actually makes you worse off.
Yeah.
I think obviously there are people who will always need therapy. I think the problem is when you've got a therapeutic culture in which everyone is encouraged to think of themselves as kind of damaged, in need of help.
Yes.
Yes.
It can often just become an outlet really just for narcissism, presenting itself as wellness, you know, and I think that's one thing that can become a big problem, particularly with how people navigate their own relationships, where, you know, it is about give and take, it is about negotiating one's boundaries or so on. But it's increasingly difficult to do that in an age in which you're constantly told to open up, constantly told to kind of stick to an ever-changing set of rules, as people would see it. It's such a minefield. And the fact that we're talking so openly about people's private lives, everything out in the open, doesn't seem to me to be particularly helpful.
But there was another article in Quillette which looked at this, which was saying the ever-expanding definition of trauma, where people are encouraged to believe that they've gone through very traumatic events that most people would never, ever really think was trauma. And it is creating this sort of, like, very self-involved, inward-looking, narcissistic victim culture, and it's a problem.
Yeah, I agree. I just get on with it. I know some people need help. If you really need help, get help, but most of us just need to get on with it. I think, oh, maybe I'm being not very tolerant. I don't know. Tom, I love this. I love it when there's a bit of hypocrisy amongst people. The woman who decided to get in the way of George Osborne's wedding has been jetting off to Thailand.
Yeah, so just weeks before she did that stunt where she threw that orange confetti in a kind of... It seems like it was a stunt that was kind of in support of Just Stop Oil, but not necessarily organised by them. They've kind of distanced themselves. But she is a climate activist, and she's revealed to, just kind of weeks before this actual stunt, done a 10,000-mile round trip to Thailand. And this just keeps happening, where you scratch an environmentalist, find a hypocrite. They're, you know, jetting halfway around the world whilst telling people they need to give up fossil fuels. And it's just, it's always that kind of sense of which these...
It's all do as I say, not as I do.
Exactly. I think they just kind of see it as the little people have to follow these things, but they don't necessarily. And also,
they just count when it's them.
Yeah,
exactly. Because they care about the environment. When they actually do something like that, it doesn't count.
They're doing it for good reasons rather than bad reasons. And I think, but one thing that I think it's a nice reminder of is the fact that the world that these people claim they want to live in, where you don't go anywhere, we don't do anything, where your life is so kind of rooted to a very small place in which you live, even they don't want to live in it. So it's a nice reminder of that, I suppose.
It's interesting, because when you actually speak to these people, such as Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion, last time I was at one of their protests, I actually said that to them, the hypocrisy of them turning up in these petrol-guzzling vehicles, which they've got their placards in, which is exactly what we saw that morning. And they said they still have to exist in the systems that we have created as human beings. So they do their very, very best, but they are living in these systems that rely on things such as plastics and fossil fuels.
Convenient, isn't it?
It is convenient. Can we have a look at Blackpool, Candice? Daily Star Sunday, looking at psycho seagulls.
Yes, well, this was originally Tom's story, but I could talk a bit about it, unless you want to go for it, Tom.
Well, there's not a lot of detail here, but essentially Blackpool is being menaced by seagulls to an even greater degree than usual, and they're pointing out that they particularly seem to be targeting, I don't know how true that is, but they're targeting the elderly and the disabled. So seagulls are out of control. They're discriminatory as well.
They're discriminatory.
There's always a story
disgusting.
About the seagulls.
It's ridiculous.
My go-to when I haven't got any light things to talk about.
Well, poor seagulls and pigeons. Everyone's always so horrible.
Poor seagulls.
Oh, no, I agree.
They deserve everything they get.
I agree. There's loads of seagulls in Blackpool. There's loads of seagulls in Barry. You get used to it.
No, they're
not
threat.
awful. They're not a threat.
No, they're very threatening.
Chuck them a chip and get on with it.
No, because they won't accept just one chip. They want to get into that bag and they want to swipe your ice cream.
Well, just bat them away.
No, they're dangerous.
They're not.
And they're out of control.
Give over.
They are. They are.
They're targeting disabled people.
Exactly. It's a great worry.
It's in the newspaper, it must be true.
You live on the coast, back me up, please. It is a great worry. There are people, there are businesses...
Great worry.
...who are having to... Yeah, they are. You know, these ice cream shops that have to give away all the freebies because the seagulls keep nicking them.
In South Africa, you have baboons.
Oh.
They are the big pests.
Could be worse.
And they get into like little packs and they sort of outwit you, and they're very clever as well, and they can do all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And so what people do to sort of ward them off is they have like dogs, like big dogs and things like that. But honestly, like, they are cheeky.
Oh.
They will come up and they will like grab stuff off you, and you'll see them sat there eating a packet of crisps and stuff.
You see, so stop moaning about the seagulls. It could be a baboon. Tom, Candice, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.